Good morning, everyone. Let's start our Saturday class. And we'll try to finish up Bhagavad Gita today so that we can start Yoga Darshan next Saturday. So let's do Gita Dhyanam first. Om Parthaye Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayan Swayam Vyasen Grathitam Puran Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritvarshine Bhagavati Mashtadashadhyayane Am Tvam Anusandhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavdveshini नमो अस्तु ते व्यास विशाल बुद्धे फुल अरविंद आयत पत्र नेत्र येन तव्या भारत तैल पूर्णः प्रज्वलितो ज्ञान मया प्रदीपः परपान पारिजाताय तोत्र वेत्र एकपान है ज्ञान मुद्राय कृष्णाय गीता अमृत दुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोगदा गोपाल नंदना पार्थो वत्सा सुधीर भोगता दुग्धम गीता अमृतम महत वसुदेव सुतम देवम कंस चानूर मर्दनम देवकी परमानंदम कृष्णम वंदे जगद्गुरुम भीष्म द्रोण तटा जयद्रथचला गांधार नीलोत्पला शल्य ग्राहवती कृपेन वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थाम विकर्ण घोरमकरा दुर्योधन अवर्तनी सो तीर्ना खलु पांडवै रन नदी के वर्तका केशवा पाराशर्य वत्सरोज अमलम गीता अर्थ गंधोटकम नानाख्यान केसरम हरि कथा संबोधन अबोधितम लोके सज्जन षटपदे रह रह पे पिए मानम मुदा भूयाद भारत पंकजम कलिमल प्रध्वंसी न श्रेयसे मूकम करोति वाचालम पंगुम लंघ्यते गिरिम यत्कृपातमं वंदे परमानंद माधवम यम ब्रह्म वरुण इंद्र रुद्र मरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यस्तवे वेदै सांगपद क्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यम सामगा ध्यानवस्थित तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यन्तं न विदुसुर असुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. We are going through the chapter 18, the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And verse number 48 says, one should not abandon, O Kante, the duty to which one is born, though faulty. For are not all undertakings enveloped by evil as fire by smoke? So last time I was telling you that there is a difference between the meanings of two phrases, born with and born into. Okay. So the vasanas a person is born with are due to be lived through without ego and desire. So that means that we have brought in some desires with us, some vasanas with us. We got to finish those. Okay, without adding new one. So born with is what we brought in and born into the environment we are in. So we got to be careful that do not add more vasanas. So that's what a spiritual seeker constantly strives to do. It's like almost like a standing apart, watching what is really happening. And what is the benefit of acting according to the temperament with which one is born with? In 49, he says, he whose intellect is unattached everywhere, who has subdued his self, from whom desire has fled, he, through renunciation, attains the supreme state of freedom from action. Okay, that's how we keep on purifying ourselves and ultimately reaching to the goal. So Lord Krishna's thesis in the entire Gita is that a mere running away from life and our duties is not sannyasa. Okay, it's not a renunciation when we run away. Because the ego arises when we are ignorant and forgetful of our spiritual nature. When the desires are absent, the thought breedings end. When thoughts, when they dry up, actions are no more. You are doing the action, but no effect on you. This state is called nashkarmya, or actionlessness. Desires are the children of ignorance. Ignorance means ignorant about your true nature. Thoughts arise from desires. Actions are thoughts expressed. So ignorance is the great grandfather of the action. So there's a deep connection between all of them. So with the knowledge of the soul, ignorance ends. And in that state, thoughts and actions cannot be. So true sannyas or the renunciation must arise out of detachment. So freedom from action is a condition in which alone can the experience of the Supreme Being rush in. And how does that happen? Lord Krishna says in the next verse, verse number 50, how he who has attained perfection reaches Brahma, in brief, do learn from me, O Kaunteya, that supreme state of knowledge. We'll see that next few verses make a beautiful section of this chapter. Even though we have learned that earlier also from Lord Krishna, but he is reminding us of the various descriptions of a man of perfection that were given earlier. The technique of meditation is being described now, actually. The condition of the equipment of perception, feeling, thinking at the time of the perfect meditation. He says, endowed with a pure intellect, controlling the self by firmness, relinquishing sound and other objects, and abandoning attraction and hatred. This is verse number 51. Continuation of this in 52, dwelling in solitude, eating but little, speech, body, and mind subdued, always engaged in meditation and concentration, taking refuge in dispassion. We all know that these efforts can build up a temple of success only when the inner personality has a deep foundation upon certain enduring values of life. And those values are mentioned in verse number 53. Having abandoned egoism, power, arrogance, desire, anger, greed, and free from the notion of mine, and so peaceful. He says he is fit to become Brahma. Ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham parigraham vimuchya nirmamha shanta brahma bhuvai kalpate. So over here we have a list of the things which are to be renounced from the inner core of our personality. All restlessness is caused by the ego and its onward rush towards finite objects. So what then is the next stage of development after having these qualities? He says becoming Brahma, because in the previous verse, he said after having all these qualities, he's fit to become Brahma. He says becoming Brahma, serene in the self, he neither grieves nor desires. The same to all beings, he obtains a supreme devotion towards me. So we can see that with constant self-effort, relative peace in the mind is to be maintained for longer periods of time. We got to guard this peace, because joys and sorrows will be constantly reaching our heart from the outer world. We cannot control the outer world, but we got to learn how to control our inner world. So if one aspect of the ego, the I do mentality, is conquered, we must equally attend to the destruction of the other aspect of the ego, the I enjoy mentality. Kartapan and the bhogtapan. We got to conquer both of them. He says he grieves not because he feels no incompleteness in himself. Because grief is always when we feel incomplete. Something has been taken away from us. But we know that the real cannot be taken away. And what exactly then is the next stage? Verse number 55, he says, by devotion, he knows me in essence. What and who I am. Then having known me in my essence, he enters into me, the Supreme. You remember earlier also, Lord Krishna said, with devotion, my Bhagat will know me and enter into me. The entry mentioned here is not like that of we entering a structure. It is like a dreamer entering into a waking state. That is the entry. Devotion for the Lord is never complete without service to the living world of creatures. He says in verse number 56, doing all actions, always taking refuge in me. By my grace, he obtains the eternal, indestructible state or abode. So he's not just sitting like a statue somewhere, very busy, but doing all the actions for God, though. Such a seeker who is constantly working and fulfilling his obligatory duties to the society and towards himself has God's grace. This is what Lord says in 56, by my grace. And what happens? Mentally renouncing all actions to me, 57. Mentally renouncing all actions to me, having me as the highest goal, resorting to the yoga of discrimination, ever fix your mind on me. This is a buddhi yoga he talked about earlier. Chetasa sarv karmani mei sanyasya matparam. Buddhi yogam upashritye mat chit satatam. So buddhi yoga means controlling life and regulating its movements through discrimination. That's a buddhi yoga. Now Lord Krishna says, if someone refuses to follow this kind of a path, what would be his condition? 58. Fixing your mind upon me, you shall by my grace overcome all obstacles. But if from egoism you will not hear me, you shall perish. So in other words, in all activities, be conscious of the Lord, without whom no action is ever possible. Often our intellect becomes itself a victim of the impulses and instincts of our lower nature, which is called mind. And with the mind we choose, either we can choose freedom or we can choose bondage. Filled with egoism, if you think, I will not fight, vain in this your resolve, your nature will compel you. This is verse number 59, because he says your Rajogun nature will compel you. Because as a Kshatriya, Arjun was predominantly Rajasic also. I do mentality was there. And also because of the following reason you must fight. He says, O son of Kunti, bound by your own karam, born of your own nature, that which through delusion you wish not to do, even that you shall do helplessly. That means even if you think that you don't want to stay here, you want to run away from the war zone, but mentally you'll be here. You'll be fighting because of wrong thinking, miscalculations. Arjun feels that he does not like war and he is not ready to face it. But in spite of his determination, he will be compelled to fight by his own nature. And this is the nature I was talking about, born with. Because it's ordered by the existing vasanas. So in the previous 2 or 3 verses, we are told by Lord Krishna, remember me constantly. What does this mean? How should we remember? Does it mean meditating upon the Lord? What should be our relationship with him? Are we to remember as a historical person? All these questions are answered in the next verse. Verse number 61. The Lord dwells in the heart of all beings, O Arjun, causing all beings by his elusive power to revolve as if mounted on a machine. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hrideshe Arjun tishtati Brahmyan sarvabhutani yantra arudani maya. The advice given by the Lord is clear and beyond all shades of doubt in this verse. Recognize him as one who dwells in the heart of everyone. And heart over here is more figurative than literal. It is something like saying, when we say large heart or a good heart, what does that mean? That means good qualities. So residing in heart, meaning in the mind of one who has cultivated the divine qualities such as love, kindness, patience, cheer, affection, tenderness, forgiveness, charity, etc. The essential life in all of us is one and the same. If there be a Lord within, meaning a power that rules over and guides all my activities, what are my responsibilities and duties towards him? Lord Krishna says in verse number 62, fly unto him for refuge with all your being, O Bharat. By his grace you shall obtain supreme peace and eternal abode. That means renounce the ego and act. So the Gita requires all of us to live and act with our hearts resting in self-dedicated surrender to the consciousness, the harmonious oneness of life. So in short, we are asked to identify ourselves with the soul rather than the vehicle through which we are expressing. So in conclusion, Lord Krishna says, thus, the wisdom which is greater secret than all secrets has been declared to you by me. Having reflected upon it fully, you now act as you choose. This is verse number 63. Yatha ichhasi tatha kuru. This can be considered the closing verse of Gita, actually. So what he's saying, reflect over it. I have given you the knowledge. So the knowledge gained through reading and listening must be assimilated and brought within our understanding. So we should do that too. Then alone that knowledge becomes wisdom. That's the wisdom he's talking about. The wisdom which is greater secret than all secrets. And then he says, act as you choose. We all have the freedom. There's no compulsion here. A true prophet will only constantly counsel the people, will never compel. That's what we learn from our rishis, our avatars. Because Lord Krishna placed all the facts and figures of life in front of him, the principles of method of living. Now Krishna is inviting Arjuna to make his own independent decision after considering these points. This is a freedom. Devotion to the Lord is the secret of success in Karma Yoga. This is explained in the following. Lord Krishna says, here again my supreme word, most secret of all, because you are dearly beloved of me. Therefore, I will tell you what is good for you. So the motive force behind every teacher coming out into the world to preach, to explain, to expound is his abundant love for mankind. So out of compassion, teachers teach us. And again, he's advising Arjuna. He says, fix your mind upon me. Verse number 65. Be devoted to me, sacrifice to me, bow down to me. You shall come surely then to me alone. Truly do I promise to you. Why? Because you are dear to me. Man mana bhav bhakta madhyaji mam namaskuru. Mam ev eshyasi satyam te pratijane priyasi. He has laid down 4 conditions for a successful seeker in this verse. And those who have accomplished them all in themselves, an assurance of realization is given here. You shall reach me. Lord is saying that. So that means I promise you truly. He adds a punch to this personal endorsement when he says, you are dear to me. Lord Krishna now proceeds to speak of the infinite knowledge, the fruit of Karma Yoga, as taught in the Upanishads also. Abandoning all dharmas, take refuge in me alone. I will liberate you from all sins, grieve not. Most controversial verse in Bhagavad Gita. Sarv dharman paritajye mam ekam sharanam vraj aham tva sarv papebhyo mokshishyami ma shucha. Dharma. See, we don't understand the term dharma. That's why we just don't understand the meaning of this verse. Remember, every object in the world has 2 types of properties. One is called essential and the other is called non-essential. A substance which can remain itself intact when its non-essential qualities are absent, but it can remain ever for a split moment without its essential properties. So that means we can live without eyesight. We can live without arms and legs, but we cannot live without Atma. So dharma in us is the Atma, that is essential. Non-essential is other things. It could be the objects also, but it could be the instruments also. Or you can understand it better from the example of a fire. The color of the flame, the length, the width, the tongue of the flame, those are all non-essential. Okay, flame could be short, it could be any color. It could be orange, it could be red. Sometimes there's a smoke, sometimes no smoke. Those are non-essential qualities. But what is the essential quality, essential property of a fire? Is heat. Heat. So the essential dharma of human being is the divine spark of existence. And that is the infinite Lord. Self is realized only when we have withdrawn our false identifications with the body, mind, and intellect. This is what he says, Sarva Dharman Paritajya. Transcend from these non-essential. Reach towards the essential, the Atma. Because sometimes we think dharma means isms. No. There was no ism at that time when these beautiful verses came out of Lord Krishna's mouth. All the isms us human beings have created. And also the problem with those two. So Lord Krishna wants the meditator to accomplish 3 distinct adjustments in his inner personality. Renounce all dharmas through meditation. That means transcend your body, mind, intellect. Surrender to my refuge alone. Stop all worries. So surrender means just see that spark, divine spark inside, which is holding you up, and stop all worries. Mashucha. So as a reward, Lord Krishna promises, I shall release you from all sins. Renouncing all dharmas means ending the ego also. Because our ego is the identification with the body, mind, and intellect, or other objects. So extrovert tendencies of the mind are to be renounced. So this is a sarva dharman paridachya. Develop introspective nature diligently. And Lord Krishna wants the seeker to renounce all his anxieties to realize Mahashacha. Now Lord Krishna states the rule that should be borne in mind while imparting this knowledge to others. Because whenever we have something so good, something which is benefiting us, we want to share it with others also. That's very natural. But there are some rules. He says this is never to be spoken by you to one who is devoid of austerities or devotion. Not to one who does not render service, seva. Not to one who desires not to listen. That means don't force it on people. Not to one who talks ill of me. Verses like this in a scripture are meant as instructions for the students on how to attune themselves properly also. That means if we want to get what Lord Krishna is giving it to us, cultivate these qualities. Austerities are important, devotion is important, service is important, full faith is important. Now the Lord proceeds to state what benefits will accrue to him who hands down his knowledge to others in the society. Verse number 68. He who with supreme devotion to me will teach this supreme secret to my devotees shall doubtless come to me. So glorification of a teacher who can give the correct interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. So this deeply profound philosophy must be imparted to my devotees. We all know philosophy is the basis of every culture. The fathers of our culture, we call them the great rishis, urged the students of the scriptures not to keep the knowledge to themselves, but to impart it freely to others, share it with others. Not only this, but the Lord expresses that he loves such a teacher much more than anybody else. Earlier also he mentioned the Vidya Dhan, the highest Dhan. Verse number 69, nor is there any among men who does dearer service to me, nor shall there be another on earth dearer to me than he. This is a duty religiously imposed upon all the students to spread the idea among the people, to carry the torch of knowledge, to convey it far and wide, provide light wherever there is darkness. one must sincerely and honestly try to live the principles in one's own life. He says, such a man is dearest to me. Not only the preacher, but even a student is congratulated by Lord Krishna. Verse number 70. And he who will study this sacred dialogue of ours, by him I shall have been worshipped by the sacrifice of wisdom. Such is my conviction. Our scriptures are this, like a sacrifice. When they talk about it, it can be divided in 4 distinct categories. Rituals, repetition, whispering, or mental. Rituals are called, it's like a vidhi, rituals. Repetition is a jap. And then jap, ultimately we got to do not very loudly, but internal jap also. And then mental, mamsa. So wisdom sacrifice falls under the last category, mental. So in the following verses, Lord Krishna indicates that even listening to the Gita discourses is beneficial. The man also who hears this, full of faith and free from malice, he too liberated shall attain to the happy worlds of those righteous deeds. So teaching is important, learning is important, listening is important too. But if the mind contains any malice towards the very philosophy or the philosopher, the arguments and the goal indicated can never appeal to the student's intellect. So that means Shraddha is needed there. Shraddha is that faculty in the intellect which really helps us. It helps us to understand the subtle import of the sacred words. So if we don't have a Shraddha, we will not understand it deeply. With the Shraddha, we absorb the philosophy also. With the Shraddha, we assimilate also. And with the Shraddha, the student live up to those very same ideals also. So Shraddha is so important. And in the next verse, he is inquiring whether Arjuna has understood whatever he taught him or not. Has this been heard, O son of Pritha, with a single pointed mind? So that shows that we got to have a single pointed mind also when we are studying. Has this been heard, O son of Prith, with single pointed mind? Has this a distraction? Has the distraction caused by your ignorance been dispelled, O Dhananjay? So ignorance is the one which shattered his mind. This knowledge, he says, did you get it with the concentration? Of course, Lord Krishna had no doubt about it, but it is only like a doctor who, confident of his own success, looks at the beaming face of the revived patient and inquire, how are you feeling now? So this is exactly what Lord Krishna is doing with Arjuna. And Arjuna is confessing. Arjuna says, destroyed is my delusion, as I have now gained my memory. That means the knowledge. Through your grace, O Achyut, I am firm. My doubts are gone. I will do according to your word. Nashta moha samriti labdha tvat prasadat mea achyut. Sthita asmi gat sandeha krishye vachnam tav. I will do as you say. So he says that I have gained a recognition of my real nature. With such a revived personality, when Arjuna reevaluates the situation, he finds no difficulty at all in discovering what his duty is. So that's why he openly declares, I will do according to your word. Now, the scene shifts back to Sanjay and Dhritarashtra in Hastinapur. He glorifies Lord Krishna and his divine song. Verse number 74. Thus have I heard this wonderful dialogue between Vasudeva and the high-souled Partha, which causes the hair to stand on end. Samvadam imam ashrosham adbhutam rom harshanam. Sanjay expresses with open acknowledgement his indebtedness to Shri Vyasa, because it was Shri Vyasa who gave him the grace to be able to see far and to hear far too. Verse number 75, through the grace of Vyasa, I have heard the supreme and most secret yoga directly from Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, himself declaring it. Yogam Yogeshwarat Krishnat Sakshat Kathyat Swayam. The deep impression created by this irresistible philosophy on the devoted heart of Sanjay is vividly painted in the next verse. Verse number 76. O king. So he's talking to the king Dhritarashtra. O king, remembering this wonderful and holy dialogue between Keshav and Arjuna, I rejoice again and again. Something which we heard, which was so beautiful, so profound, we just keep on thinking about it in our mind. That's again and again. The vision and the impression created in his heart by the philosophy that was heard are so deep and striking that Sanjay admits how irresistibly the memory of those words rises up again and again, giving him a thrill and the joy. That's why he says, I rejoice again and again. So the study of Gita gives not only a purpose to our everyday existence, but also a positive message of hope and cheer to the world. Joy. It's a joyful dialogue. And Sanjay is confessing that not only the philosophy enchants his mind, but even the memory of the Lord's wondrous forms as the total manifested universe. You remember when he saw that Vishwarupa, how joyful he was. He says, remembering again and again, remembering that most wonderful form of Hari, great is my wonder, O king, and I rejoice again and again. Tatacha samsritye rupam ati adbhutam hare. Vismayame mahan rajan harishyami cha puna puna. To a great devotee, remembering the form of the beloved of his heart is itself an ecstatic joy. And where love is, there in a repeated onward gushes, the mind automatically reaches. Just like whatever we have enjoyed in life, our mind goes there again and again. Every time. But in Sanjay's case, his joy was in that divine love, divine form. And to express that satisfaction, language is very frail. That's why sometimes we see that the word using puna puna again and again. And Sanjay is summarizing all into a declaration of his burning faith in this concluding verse of the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm sure all of you have heard this many times. Yatra yogeshwaraha krishnaha yatra partha tanurtha tatra shri vijaya bhuti dhruva niti mati mama. So this is Sanjay is saying it. He is declaring this. Wherever is Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, wherever is Parth, the archer, there are prosperity, victory, happiness, and firm policy. Firm means a steady and sound policy. This is my conviction. So this is a closing verse of Bhagavad Gita. What we have learned is that spirituality can be lived in life. And true spiritual understanding is an asset to a man engaged in a battle of life. We got to learn how to blend the sacred and the secular. That is the advice we get from Gita. With these hands, with this body, stay busy doing your duties. But internally, always stay connected with God. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Visheshyate Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much for listening, coming to the classes. Hari Om Tat Sat.